What is up, beautiful soul? Carleena Lara Bragada here to share with you our next spiral dance into the next season of life. And here we're going to be unpacking the season of fall. In the Northern Hemisphere, we call autumn fall because all of these leaves start to decay and die and they fall from the trees. And this metaphorical symbolism really highlights quite perfectly what this internal season is about. Whether or not we are able to let go and release and shed and practice non-attachment, while also starting to go inwards to reflect on what might not be serving you any longer and what needs to be cut away. Again, my name is Carleena Lara Bragada. I go by Carleena La Curandera on social media, and I am a spiritual embodiment coach, and I teach women how to return to cyclical living in order to empower their lives, as well as to feel the most liberated and authentic in their soul's fullest expression. I am also an author of the upcoming book, The Akashic Alchemist, a cyclical guide to remembering your soul's ancient wisdom, which is all about cyclical living and how to navigate our internal seasons. And that comes out on March 21st, 2023. In today's video, we're going to unpack that inner autumn season and what that shamanically and symbolically represents within our lives, and using nature as a tool to guide us into self-exploration and diving deeper into the parts of the soul that are wanting attention, love, nurturing, and support. And my intention is that these videos can really inspire a sense of compassion within yourself, to give yourself permission to allow for grace and ease, because we're not always in our internal summer fueled by fire and being able to execute and get everything done like the wind element. There needs to be time and space to slow down and also go inwards. And the season of autumn is such a potent metaphor for this, because underneath that going inwards, we find the crystal, the gem, the gold. So if you've gotten a chance to watch some of my other videos, and if you haven't, I suggest that you do. They're all under my YouTube channel here. I usually talk about how each inner season has a corresponding element that is like archetypal energy that exists in the world. So when we're in our inner summer, as I mentioned before, that's ruled by the fire element. So it's very passionate and expansive. It needs some boundaries without it, ravishing everything in sight. And these are just really metaphors for these internal energies that exist within our own personalities, as well as within the cosmos itself. So within autumn, the season of fall, the element that I like to connect this to is the element of crystal. Now, in a lot of indigenous cultures, which is what I borrow a tremendous amount of inspiration and reverence from, because I am indigenous myself, we work with the elements to help us connect with the spirit realm, and knowing that we can conjure and shamanically embody these elements in order to create spiritual and emotional shifts in our lives. Crystal is not really an element that's considered a traditional element when you start looking into some of the history and spiritual teachings. However, I got this term and created this term in conjunction with the season of fall because crystal to me represents value and this beauty and how it's buried underground, and you have to work to excavate it out and polish it and clean it to restore it to its full glory. And crystal's there all along, it's not like there's like a crystal fairy that's going around Earth and just like bopping little spots and they magically appear. The crystals are there. And it's about doing the work and the exploration to remember that they're there and to pull them out of the earth. This is inspired by 5-element theory and traditional Chinese medicine because the season of autumn correlates to the element of metal in TCM. And so you can kind of use the terms metal or crystal interchangeably here for the metaphor that I'm about to introduce. So crystal inherently holds value. It's So we think of diamonds, we think of jade and lapis lazuli, and my personal favorite, labradorite. All of these crystals hold value. And people pay money based on that value. And the more abundance of something there is, the lower the value. That's just standard economics. So talking about this really leads into one of the main kind of archetypal energies that exist when we're exploring our inner autumn, which is self-worth and value. And I'm going to get into that in a moment, but I just want to give you a brief overview of what we'll be talking about today, and then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of each subject. So we're going to unpack the yin and yang, or the divine feminine and divine masculine expressions of when our inner crystal element is in balance or when it's not, and how that shows up in our lives. We're going to talk about worth and value because this is a huge component, probably the biggest area of discussion since so many of us struggle with feeling worthy. We're also going to explore the connection to the divine masculine and particularly the archetype of the divine father energy that exists in the cosmos. Also acceptance and letting go, practicing non-attachment. We'll briefly touch on the connection of our limited self and our unlimited self and how we paradoxically are walking this realm of being human and ethereal and spiritual and what that means for us in our human existence. We're also going to talk a little bit about spaciousness and the need for spaciousness in order to tap into our worth and all these other themes. Lastly, we're going to wrap it up and talk about reverence and getting into beyond the veil and into the topic of death. And this is pretty big in a lot of cultures all over the world. If you think about Day of the Dead and the portal opening at the portal of Samhain, which is around what we know as Halloween in my country of the United States, you know, it's this opening and thinning of the veil where in cultures like Mexico and indigenous South America, there is a celebratory time to connect with ancestors and hold reverence for the wisdom that they pass down from generation to generation and to communicate with the spirit realm when that portal kind of widens and the veil thins. So let's get into it. In my other videos, I've always talked about how we have these yin and yang expressions of these archetypal energies within us. And we tend to find one default mode that's our comfort zone of how we react to the world when we're feeling out of balance. So to put that in a grounded context, your inner autumn or your inner fall is all about these themes that I just mentioned: letting go, non-attachment, having reverence for your human experience, your primal self. And if we're having difficulty with those themes, we're either going to react and defend against it, which is an archetypal yang response. It's a defense against some type of emotion that's coming up, or a divine masculine shadow response. Or we could have a yin response, or a shadow divine feminine response, or reaction really to life. So again, a yang response is a defense. It's like I have to prepare myself for the crumbling. And so if, let's say, all the leaves are falling onto the ground and there's a subconscious invitation of letting go that's kind of in the air from nature, one who might be having a yang response is going to defend against that by grasping and holding on. And this manifests in our life in the most extreme cases for some as hoarding and really accumulating possessions to provide some sense of control and security around the inevitable flow of change and ultimately death. This yang response of holding on and the inability to let go is symbolic in many ways. For some of us, it's holding on in codependent relationships. And so the divine masculine shadow is controlling and gripping and needing that sense of security or safety from someone else. And this yang defense of holding and grasping. So just using this moment in time to reflect in what ways in your life have you grasped to people or circumstances or your comfort zone even in order to feel a sense of stability and security, or even a sense of inherent worth. Because again, your inner autumn is all about worthiness. That's when we're in our most high vibrational energy around this season, this internal season, is to feel worthy and inherently of value. And sometimes we can trick ourselves, and some people will just buy materials or purchase a car that they can't really afford in order to inherently appear valuable to society that values possession. The inverse to this energy is the shadow divine feminine reaction to life when it's inviting us to change, which is the inability to hold on. And so this addiction to change and kind of shape-shifting and avoiding any type of long-lasting connection or commitment. Divine femininity is inherently amorphous and changing. It's always shifting and evolving. And when we're in flow with our divine feminine energy, there's a healthy sense of change that's happening. However, people who are in the shadow divine feminine reaction to life when it comes to their inner autumn or inner invitation to let go, they will do it super nonchalantly with this inability to really let in and find a sense of security and stability. And it's an addiction to change and transformation and transmutation. The way I kind of view this is, for me in the Northern Hemisphere, autumn falls within the zodiac sign of Scorpio. And one of the shadows of Scorpio is an addiction to transformation. It's like there's never a sense of completion or acknowledgement or feeling like you've arrived or have even recognized the growth that you've had, because you're in this healer's trap. And I teach this to the clients that I work with, of being mindful of the healer's trap. It's like the more that we want to learn and grow and evolve, we can kind of get addicted to picking the wound and reopening trauma and getting really caught in the cognitive cycle of healing, and never truly acknowledging how much growth has happened and how much transformation has happened, to allow for a sacred pause and, not needing to change things all the time. So this leads into this tenet of inner autumn of acknowledging yourself, acknowledging how far you've come. So if you find yourself connected to that divine feminine shadow of the addiction to change and the healer's trap, this is an invitation to acknowledge the growth of where you were and where you are now. And can where you be now be a magical moment of appreciation and reverence for this version of you, because this version of you only exists in the now. So often we can get caught in that healer's trap of thinking I have to evolve and transform in order to belong or feel a sense of worthiness to walk this path. And the thing about worth and value is that it's quite subjective. It changes based on who the viewer is or the judge of that worth is. And it's not something that all people will agree upon. So going back to my first example of talking about your inner crystal energy, crystals only have value because people believe that they have value. And so a diamond is unfortunately viewed as a high value item versus something that's more common like quartz or agate is viewed as something that is inherently maybe less valuable based on just price point of what people are willing to pay. And I say unfortunately with diamonds just as a sidebar because of all of the pain and suffering and human trafficking and slave labor that's involved in mining diamonds, and truthfully in mining a lot of crystals out there. So the social justice warrior in me wants to use this opportunity to also teach, be mindful of where you are purchasing your crystals from, because so often they are used to exploit children and women and human beings on this planet, because the world is booming with the spiritual revolution and finding crystals to hold more spiritual and energetic value. So value is entirely dependent on the population who is using the service, and it's all based around needs. So let me give you an example. I have a close friend of mine who grew up in an immigrant family, 2 immigrant parents who worked their fucking asses off to get them to the United States. And they lived a difficult life, her parents, of, going through phases of poverty and discrimination and really working quite hard to make a living for themselves here. And their perception of the American dream for their child was to be a doctor or some type of social high-ranking title and job and career, because that would be a metaphorical symbol that they've made it, that all of the sacrifices that they have made for their family blossomed into something beautiful through the career choice of their child. And we see this a lot in immigrant families. I have my own context from my own culture of what is viewed as valuable and invaluable. Like going to college, for example, was such a privilege, and I was first generation on my father's side going to college. And so for my friend, her growing up with this pressure to become a doctor was viewed as a need of her family. Her family had a need of feeling like all of their hard work paid off, and it was symbolically represented by her going to medical school or law school. And she tried this route for quite a while and struggled a lot because in her heart it didn't align with her internal values, and it didn't meet her internal needs of what she really wanted to do in her life. And this conditioning over her whole entire lifetime led her to have a deep sense of unworthiness, that her very existence was not of value, especially in relationship to her parents. And this was because her parents valued a career path as a symbolic representation of meeting their own personal needs and feeling like the work that they put in paid off. And so this illusion that my friend is inherently unworthy because of the subconscious conditioning of her childhood is so pervasive and harmful to the human psyche. To feel that our parents did not value who we are as a person due to life choices is a common thing that we see manifesting, all because of our upbringing in childhood. And so value and worth is entirely dependent on needs, and it's completely subjective and chaotic, which means that we will never, despite all of the effort in the world, be able to present ourselves as valuable to everyone. And I'm going to do an entire video on the topic of value if it's wanted. So if you want me to do that, drop that in the comments below and let me know. Because all of these topics that I'm talking about today can really get expanded on. And they are expanded on in my course that I have for my mentees called the Cosmic Creatrix. And this online course is designed to be a 14-week journey, spending 2 weeks in each energetic season and exploring the energetic elements and symbolic archetypes of what I'm talking about today. And we take a deep dive into each of these subjects. So you consider this video like an introductory look at these subjects, but I go a lot deeper in that mentorship and in the online course. So if you are looking for more connection to these topics and more self-exploration, be sure to check out my Cosmic Creatrix mentorship. There are more information and links in the description below. Worthiness is completely subjective, and it's really dependent on who's asking. So again, we can't please everyone, and your message is not meant to be for everyone. Your healing arts are not meant to be for everyone. And I like to get really clear about who I like to work with, because I want to work with people who understand my language and who value what I have to say in the way that I desire to say it, that feels authentic to me. So when people are struggling with feeling unworthy, one of the first areas of life that I invite them to explore is their surroundings. Are you surrounded by people who value the things that you are interested in and who value your gifts? So each of us have our own sector of genius, of natural mastery. And whether you've discovered what that is yet or not, you have it. I used to think that I didn't have any skills. I didn't do well in sports, wasn't great at school until I got to my master's program and really focused because I was learning about something I valued. And I always felt like I didn't have any skill sets. And it wasn't until I started exploring the spiritual realm that I discovered how charismatic I am, how I love public speaking and writing and philosophical concepts. And I discovered that I was looking for value in all the wrong places, places that my society has taught me to seek value in. So that's all I'm going to share about value and worth for today, because there is quite a bit to get through in terms of our inner crystal element. But just know that you can't please everyone. And so get really clear on who your demographic is, who is your ideal audience for the unique message that you have to share. The next tenet of this is the divine masculine father. So there is an archetypal energy of the divine father out there that is always looking to protect us and support us and provide a sense of stability and inherent value. And so your sense of self-worth from a psychological standpoint is developed in early childhood between the ages of 2 to 6, maybe 2 to 8. And it's all about how much acknowledgement and support and praise you received from dad. If your birth dad wasn't in your life or wasn't that much of an affectionate or loving person to give acknowledgement and you feel unworthy, there is a psychological connection there. However, as adults and spiritual conscious adults, it is no longer dad's fault for feeling unworthy. What I mean by that is it's up to you to tap into your own sense of the divine father that lives within you. So just like we have this archetypal energy of fall that can exist in your internal world, and the archetypal energy of summer and fire that can exist in your internal world, the divine father archetype exists in your inner world as well. And the divine father is the divine masculine version of dad. And this is your most loving, supportive, and most filled with praise and acknowledgement for you father. And it doesn't even have to be like your real dad that you're picturing in your mind. It could be a cosmic dad. And this cosmic dad is something that exists within you. And what I mean by that is at any time when you're feeling unworthy, you can sit in prayer and devotion and start to send yourself acknowledgement and praise. Look at how far you've come, my love. Look at all that you've traversed and transmuted in your life. I am so proud of you. I acknowledge you. I know it's been hard and difficult, and it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. And eventually that too will pass and you'll be able to let it go. And for now, feel how you're feeling in this present moment of now. I acknowledge you in your human experience. That is just an example of what you could say to yourself during a difficult time to pretend or embody or shamanically shapeshift into the most loving, kind, and supportive inner father. This ties into another facet of your inner autumn of acceptance. So the most supportive father will accept and love the choices that you make, or love you in the choices that you make. And so acceptance is really acknowledging and accepting the moment as it is. And this doesn't mean that you have to like what's happening in your life or even support it or condone it. However, it's a simple acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is a big theme here. Simple acknowledgement that this is what's actually happening. So much suffering comes from denying the present moment and wishing for things to be different. And there's so much of this realm that is out of your physical human control. And so acceptance of the moment and acceptance of what is a way to alleviate suffering when you're navigating and traversing a difficult time in your life. It is a waste of your vital energy to resist against what is. And so often we will resist against what is because the real reality is facing what you are feeling in the moment. So an example of this that is tying in with the themes of inner autumn and letting go and change is grief. And there is no proper way to grieve. I just want to preface that grief is such a unique and probably one of the most tender human emotions to feel over the loss of someone that you love. And finding acceptance around someone's death is difficult, especially depending on the caliber of the relationship. And so I want to be compassionate and mindful and say that I understand on a human level that acceptance around loss can be difficult. What adds extra suffering into the concept, the emotional experience of grief, is wishing for things to have been different. So often when I work with people and counsel them through grief, they are wanting to have said something to the person that passed, or are feeling regret over the way that they showed up in the relationship, or not getting to say what they really felt towards the person, or perhaps the way that they passed was tragic, or they don't feel should have happened the way that it happened. And there's an essence of them that is not wanting to accept that that is what happened. And from a spiritual context, we can find more emotional liberation from this tender emotion, which is perfectly natural and healthy to feel, by coming to terms with what actually happened, and to feel the sense of regret or guilt or shame or self-doubt or insecurity that's wanting to come up. Because by denying that it happened, it's also denying the underlying emotions of where that pain is coming from, which is what makes grief so complex. It's typically much more than just the loss of someone. It is the context of how they passed and the person's interpersonal relationship with the person who transitioned. On a simpler level, acceptance is accepting how you're feeling from any given moment. And how do you do that? Through embodied presence. So spaciousness is one of the gifts of our inner autumn and this inner crystal element being in balance. Because when we're feeling spacious, you're giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling and be in the present moment, which is really all that there is. Everything else is an illusion, a construct, a hologram, or a perspective that isn't grounded in reality except for this given moment. And so when you move into a space of meditation or presence like ecstatic dance or an emotional release technique, you're giving yourself permission to move into the spaciousness of the moment and find a sense of acceptance and truly feeling how you're feeling in this exact moment. Acceptance doesn't mean that it's going to be pleasant or enjoyable when you come to accept your reality. However, there is a sense of liberation that follows due to no longer repressing painful emotions and processing them in a healthy way. In my online course, there are plenty of emotional tools to learn how to transmute this energy and how to somatically let it go. Because so often I hear, let it go, oh, just let that go, or I just know I have to let it go. And it's not a mental thing. Letting go actually means a primal embodiment of your emotions. Remember, emotions mean energy in motion. It is a hormone that gets released in your body, various hormones. And if you don't allow that hormones to rush and flood your bloodstream and move through your system, which means you're going to be feeling some type of energy, if you don't allow that process to happen, the hormones kind of freeze in place, and that's what we call trauma. And that freezing in place isn't permanent, it's a temporary freeze, but you can thaw that frozen energy by doing embodied somatic movement. So one way to do that is ecstatic dance and just letting your body tell you where to go, and you're not performing for anyone. You're just letting your body do what it needs to do, okay? And it's dancing like no one's watching. There are also amazing tools like pillow thrashing and screaming into a pillow that allow for you to release some of this rage or energy that might be associated with whatever you're navigating. If you'd like more emotional release techniques and tools, drop a comment and let me know. I am considering making a mini course on emotional release because so many people I work with really struggle with understanding, how do I let it go? Like, why is this still bothering me? How come my trauma is still here? And that's usually because there hasn't been space and a sacred ritual around feeling emotions. So coming to a sense of acceptance requires you to transmute your emotions and feel them in a conscious way. And I don't mean ruminating in thought or picking your trauma wound. I mean somatically feeling what you're feeling and letting it move through like a breeze. The more you do that, the less energetic charge you're going to have, and the stronger of a healthy relationship you're going to feel to your past. And it also allows us to find acceptance in grief when you allow yourself to fully surrender to the tenderness of it. You know, what would happen if you let yourself come apart? And I say this again with compassion and grace because it can be a scary thing to fall apart and to emotionally go there. However, so many of us are not taught how to safely go there. And so if you're looking for ways to do that, be sure to check out my Cosmic Creatrix mentorship program and my online course, aptly titled The Cosmic Creatrix and / The Akashic Alchemist. Either one will have the same content around how to somatically release emotions in a safe and healthy way. We've talked about spaciousness, we've talked about acceptance and divine father energy and how to tap into your divine worth and inherent value. And to sum up this video, when we do all of these practices, essentially you're tapping into radical self-love. And radical self-love comes from this philosophical understanding, in my perspective, that you are unlimited, meaning you are source, you are God, you are the goddess, you are the creatrix, and it's in you. And you're paradoxically you, your personality, your ego, your conditioned program self. Both of these versions of you are existing simultaneously. And so when people are struggling with self-love, I invite them to start to build a devotional practice. And I invite you to connect with your limitless self, the infinite self, the part of you that is source. So creating a daily meditation practice, start with 3 minutes a day and pray or breathe or dance or journal. Do something that connects you to the part of you that's beyond your limited self's awareness and centering perspective. When you do this, you strengthen this connection and you're able to tap into the part of yourself that has all the answers, that is only there existing in the realm of love, because it's such a high vibrational version of you. And only high vibrations like love and forgiveness and gratitude and trust and joy exist in that realm. So that version of you is the part of you that's loving and nurturing your human self. And a simple tool that I use to do that is, it's okay, you're human, and I love you. It's okay to feel how you're feeling, and to imagine that when I'm saying I love you, it's not my ego self saying it to myself, because that just creates resistance within my own body. It becomes like a fight, like, well, why do you love me? There's nothing to love, and it just, gets into this like tit for tat ego battle. I'm saying to tap into the part of you that is source. So if you're here, I'm going to assume that you have belief in a higher power. And so that higher power is woven into the very fiber of your being. It is you. You are source experiencing itself as you. Source is not all-knowing. Source is living all these different incarnations at once to learn and to get a feeling for what it's like to be a human being on Earth, or to be a plant on Earth, or to be a panther, or a butterfly, or a mountain, or a volcano. All of these things on Earth have consciousness and are helping Source grow, evolve, and understand itself better. So it split itself into all these different fragments so that it could understand itself through that separation. So you are that. That's the Sanskrit mantra, Hari Om Tat Sat. I am that. You are Source, experiencing itself as you. How magical. And so if you're stuck in that sense of feeling unworthy, remember that. Remember that you are the universe experiencing itself as you. And all of your hiccups and missteps and maybe regrets that you might consider from your past are actually valuable information to the divine and are helping Source understand what it's like to make particular decisions and the outcomes that can come from them. What it's like to love so deeply that you feel that love in someone's absence through transition into death. And so hold this in your back pocket when you're struggling with worth or that self-love piece, that you can conjure Source energy to shine their love down onto you. And in this context, Source does not judge. There is nothing you need to do other than breathe and exist and live your life how you're living it, because that is exactly why Source set out to be you in this incarnation. There's nothing that you could do that is wrong or bad or inherently unworthy, because all of it are lessons and is teaching Source what it's like to be you. The last thing I'll share today is this concept of reverence. That reverence is a gift of the inner crystal element in our inner autumn. Because reverence is this deep sense of appreciation for this life and for what goes beyond it. The very concept of having death and understanding that we can die and will die at some point adds value to this life. And so you only have one of these lives as you. And there is no one on earth that is you, that is living and walking in your unique perspective. And so there can be this sense of reverence that you tap into to think that it is a miracle, statistically a miracle, that life even exists, and that it exists to the extent with which it does, with ancient super volcanoes and butterflies, caterpillars transforming into butterflies, and the tides of the ocean and the phases of the moon, and getting to see the Milky Way at night in the desert. The miraculousness of this is that it will end, and the version of you will end. And so there's a reverence that we can tap into of you acknowledging the miracle of life that is you. There is only one of you. And there is only one of this particular dance around the sun in this body, in this flesh that you feel. And so can you give yourself permission to be primal and feel your real emotions, to accept where you are in your healing journey and acknowledge how far you've come? And can you surround yourself with people who value your words and your truth and your spiritual and emotional perspectives on life, so that you too can remind yourself that your value is actually just connected to you having this experience and your unique coloring and expression? Because death is inevitable in this lifetime. And when we come to terms with that, when you accept that there is going to be a moment of completion in this particular dance, only for it to start over again in a new shape and color and form, when you tap into that acceptance, what magic can you find in the everyday human experience of washing the dishes and taking out the trash and having a conversation with a loved one? Can you tap into the reverence for this miracle of life, and particularly your life in all of its richness and all of its complexness, in all of its messy magnificence? And so I hope today's video fosters a bit more compassion for yourself in navigating this human experience, because that is what we're all doing. And we wouldn't have all of this wide spectrum of human emotion if it wasn't a part of the process. If you're looking for ways to shamanically let go of the past or some trauma or pain, you are not alone. And I would love to work with you on finding healthy and safe ways for you to release in a way that is long-lasting and provides you a sense of relief. If you would like to work together, I am accepting applications for my Cosmic Creatrix mentorship. And I also have an online course, also called the Cosmic Creatrix, for women, and the Akashic Alchemist for all souls. Different languages, but same content. And this is intended to inspire you to feel more compassionate with yourself and to hold yourself in grace and to tap into this paradoxical infinite self and limited human self, and how to bring into union both sides of the self for liberation, for authentic self-expression, for creativity, and of course for a little bit of mysticism and tapping into what is beyond the veil. If you'd like to learn more about all of these different contexts and subjects that I talked about today, pick a subject and drop a comment. What was your favorite nugget of wisdom that you'd like me to expand upon? And I will happily make a video and share it here on YouTube for you. And if you enjoyed today's content, please like, comment, and subscribe. So liking this video, subscribing to my YouTube channel, and commenting about what your biggest takeaway was really supports this channel. And I also love to inspire people to tap into inquiry. So this video can be a little bit heady and, more mental. And one way that you can make this an embodied integration of the information is to take a moment and reflect. And my question to you to drop in the comments is, in what way can you acknowledge yourself right now in your life? Can you offer a sense of praise and acknowledgement and see yourself for where you are in your life and celebrate whatever win you want to highlight? And I invite you to drop that in the comments so that we can energetically hold you and support you and acknowledge you with that share. You can find me on social media at Carleena La Curandera, and I'm pretty active with sharing little in a nutshell videos about these subjects. So be sure to follow along on Instagram and TikTok, and pretty soon I'll be updating that Twitter profile. And all my social media links are in the description of this YouTube video. I wish you a beautiful inner autumn, and I can't wait to hear your shares on that reflection prompt of what way can you acknowledge yourself today. Until next time, sweet soul.